At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name's Chikondi. Let's begin. Sterilized gauze, antiseptic cleansers, and the sharp ammonia sting of Jiden hemolymph saturated the air in the triage tent. The sterile, controlled environment pressed against the chaotic fringe of a war that devoured all boundaries. Filtered light, the color of a weak sun through a dusty sky, fell across the rows of cots. Here, the quiet hum of nutrient drips and the rhythmic sigh of ventilators formed a pocket of defiant order against the mud and misery of Firebase Scoria. Medic Liam Navarre worked within that pocket. He moved between cots, his actions spare and certain, each motion born from long hours and a deep familiarity with the geography of pain. His patient, a Jiden infantryman, lay strapped to a reinforced medical gurney, his guttural curses a percussive counterpoint to the tense calm. The Jiden's leg, a thick column of fibrous interlocking muscle, bent at an unnatural angle. Shards of dark biomineralized bone jutted through the tough, shale-covered integument. "Easy now," Liam murmured. He spoke to the space between them, his low, steady voice a hum meant to soothe the raw edges of fear and aggression. "The sedative is taking hold. You'll feel a pressure, nothing more." The Jiden spat a string of harsh, clicking syllables. The universal translator clipped to Liam's collar rendered it as a series of anatomical novelties involving his maternal line. "Keep your hands off me, soft skin. Your weakness is a contagion. I would rather lose this limb to rot than accept pity." Liam continued his preparations, undeterred by the venom. He picked up a microsuture and a canister of bone-knitting foam. The Jiden's dermal plating was fascinating, layered like gray shale, cool and smooth to the touch except where shrapnel had cracked and splintered it. A high-gravity world and brutal existence had forged their robust physiology. It made them formidable warriors and challenging patients. "I'm offering treatment," Liam said, his attention on the wound. "It's my job." He cleaned the wound, irritating the torn flesh. The Jiden hissed, a sound of superheated air forced through a narrow vent, but the fight drained out of him, giving way to drug-induced lethargy. "Your job?" the soldier growled, lolling his massive head to the side. He fixed his deep-set eyes, lacking any visible sclera or iris, on Liam. "Your job is to kill me. We are at war." "My job is to mend the broken," Liam corrected. He reached for a small leather pouch tied to his belt. He loosened the drawstring and tipped a few dark seeds into his palm. A faint smell of mint and damp earth rose from them. Hidioma, a small, stubborn piece of home he carried with him everywhere. He held his palm out for the Jiden to see. "On my world, we have a promise, an oath. First, do no harm. That promise doesn't end where the battlefield begins." The Jiden stared at the seeds, then back at Liam's face, his lip plates curled in contempt. "You are all insane! You fight with one hand and heal with the other. It is a flaw in your design, a fatal weakness. Warlord Sarek will burn it out of you." Liam tucked the seeds back into their pouch. "Maybe," he said, picking up the bone setter. "Or maybe it's the only thing that makes any of this bearable." He aligned the tool with the fractured limb. "This is going to feel strange." He activated the device. A low thrum filled the air, and a faint blue light enveloped the Jiden's leg as he injected the foam, which hardened around the bone fragments, guiding them back into place. The soldier grunted, his body tensing, but held his silence. The medic worked on, his attention unwavering. A stubborn set to his jaw was the only hint of his relation to his sister, the Fleet Admiral. He believed in this work, and the fundamental truth that a life was a life, and his duty was to preserve it, regardless of its uniform. In the tense, sterile quiet, under the baffled gaze of an enemy, Liam Navarre upheld his oath. It was an act of faith in a universe that offered little evidence to support it. The illusion of peace shattered. A deep, resonant lurch began it, vibrating up through the field hospital's deck plates. The lights flickered once, twice, then winked out, plunging the tent into the eerie red glow of its emergency backup system. The ventilator's rhythmic sigh hitched, and the frantic alarm of failing systems took its place. Outside, the air tore apart. The percussive thunder of a Jidan orbital barrage walked its way across the firebase, each impact a seismic event that shuddered through the bedrock. The ground bucked, a violent living spasm. Metal groaned and tore. The shockwave threw Liam against a supply cart, the crash of medical instruments scattering across the floor. He scrambled to his feet, a disorienting tone screaming in his skull. "Report!" he yelled into the chaos, the roar consuming his shout. An orderly, a young woman with wide, terrified eyes, stumbled towards him.
"It's a full-scale assault, sir! They punched right through the orbital grid! Comms are down! They're everywhere!"
The tent's fabric ripped open, revealing a landscape of fire and ruin. The sky roiled with smoke and fire. Jidan dropships, brutalist wedges of dark metal, were descending through the chaos, disgorging warriors who moved with terrifying purpose. Panic ignited. The wounded who could move tried to crawl for their cots. The medical staff, trained for emergencies, found themselves in an apocalypse. Liam's focus narrowed, a calm logic cutting through the noise. Triage. Protect the patients. The Jidan soldier he had just treated came into view. The gurney lay overturned, and the massive warrior was struggling against his restraints, his eyes wide with a mixture of fury and fear as the ceiling above him sagged, shedding dust and metal fragments. Liam lunged forward. He covered the Jidan's body with his own, just as a heavy support beam, twisted and glowing with heat, crashed down where he stood moments before. It struck the gurney, shattering it, the impact jarring through Liam's bones. For a moment, the impact and the Jidan's weight beneath him stole his breath. He pushed himself up, tasting blood and dust. He was alive. Shadows fell over them. 3 Jidan warriors stood there, their pulse rifles leveled. Enormous figures in heavy armor, their gazes fixed on the scene with bewilderment. Before them, the human medic, the soft skin, shielded one of their own from the falling debris, their enemy. A warrior tilted its head, a slow, cold gesture of confusion. He barked a question at the wounded soldier on the ground. The soldier, panting, his leg now a source of agony without the gurney's support, answered in a series of harsh clicks. The translator on Liam's collar was still active.
"He saved me. The soft skin shielded me with his body."
The lead Jidan looked from his wounded comrade to the small human medic who was now getting to his feet, movements measured, raising his open hands. The warrior's gaze was flat and depthless. Such an act was illogical, a failure of programming, an error to study and exploit. He lowered his rifle and gestured with its barrel.
"You,"
he growled, the translator turning his voice into a gravelly command.
"You will come."
As they dragged him from the tent's ruins and into the firestorm, his last sight was of the chaos, of the small pocket of order he had tried to maintain, now consumed by the war. The broadcast began abruptly. It sliced through every active human military and civilian channel in the sector, bypassing encryptions with captured authentication keys from the firebase's primary communications relay. On the bridges of starships, in the mess halls of distant orbital stations, and in the quiet ready rooms of fighter pilots, 1 billion screens flickered from grids of fleet vectors and energy readings to a single, stark image. The scene showed a Jidan command post, hastily established amidst the human firebase's ruins. The backdrop was smoke and flame. In the frame's center, Warlord Sarek stood, resplendent in his ornate matte black armor. He embodied the Jidan warrior ideal, tall, broad-shouldered, projecting an absolute, unshakable authority. At his feet, kneeling but with his spine rigid, was medic Liam Navarre. Bruises and grime streaked his face, his medic's uniform torn, but his expression was calm. He looked directly into the camera. Sarek let the image linger for a full 30 seconds. After a moment, he spoke. His voice, filtered through the broadcast, was a deep, resonant baritone laced with contempt.
"Behold, The Human Federation's defenders,
he began, his tone grand, almost pontifical.
For generations, you have waged this war with a rotten core, an ideological poison you call compassion. You tend to our wounded. You offer aid to the warriors sworn to destroy you. You believe this makes you righteous. You believe it makes you strong.
He paced around the kneeling human, a deliberate predatory circle.
I am here to teach you the truth. Your compassion is a lie you tell yourselves to mask your terror of true conflict. It is a cancer, a weakness that has prolonged this war and cost countless lives on both sides.
He stopped directly behind Liam.
You send us your medics. We send you our executioners. That is the fundamental difference between our species. We embrace the totality of war. You recoil from it.
Sarek drew a long ceremonial blade from a sheath at his hip. Its edge shimmered with a lethal sharpness. He rested its tip on Liam's shoulder. Liam remained still. He closed his eyes.
This medic,
Sarek declared, raising his voice,
is the physical embodiment of your flawed philosophy. We captured him while he shielded one of my warriors, an act of such profound stupidity it defies tactical analysis. He is a symbol, and today I will break that symbol. I will show your fleet, your leaders, your people, the futility of mercy.
He raised the blade high.
Let this be my only message to you. We offer only battle. We seek only victory, absolute and unforgiving. We will burn this weakness from you and from this sector. We will teach you the Jaidan way.
He brought the blade down. The act itself was swift, brutal, and intimate. The broadcast held on the final, terrible moment, then on the stillness that followed. Warlord Sarek stood over the body, his chest expanded, a conqueror, convinced he had delivered a masterful psychological blow. On the fleet flagship Perseverance's command deck, a vacuum fell, sucking away sound, thought, and breath. The main holoscreen, 20 feet high, displayed the horrifically clear image of Warlord Sarek standing over the fallen medic. Every officer on the bridge stood motionless in their polished blue and gold uniforms. Hands gripped consoles so tightly the knuckles showed bone. A collective tension pulled every jaw taut. They had all seen too much death, but this was an execution, a statement, an abomination. At the command deck center, in her raised chair, sat Fleet Admiral Kaya Navar. She remained motionless, silent. She held her breath. She fixed her storm-gray eyes on the screen. Her face, shaped by 50 years of service and combat, was a mask of cold, professional granite. The crew looked toward their consoles, anywhere but at her. Everyone in the command structure knew that the murdered medic, Liam Navar, was her brother, her only living family. They had watched him die with her, and the personal agony they could only imagine amplified the shared horror of that moment 1,000 times. They waited for an outburst, a scream of grief, a roar of fury. Her composure held. Kaya Navar watched the screen for 10 seconds, each second distended, stretching into a painful eternity. Liam as a boy climbing an apple tree, his face smeared with dirt and a joyful grin. Him on his graduation day from the medical academy, his idealism a light so bright it almost hurt to look at. His last message to her, a cheerful note about trying to grow earth mint in the hydroponics bay. To command a fleet, you need a full stomach, Kaya, and to win a war, you must always remember what you're fighting for. She compressed all of it, the love, the memories, the grief, into a single infinitesimally small point of unbearable density. She took that point and locked it away in a cold, dark place deep inside herself. She would visit it later, much later. For now, there was work to do. She shifted her gaze slightly, her focus returning from the past to the brutal present. Her voice, when it came, was unnervingly quiet, yet it cut through the vacuum on the bridge with the sharp edge of broken glass.
Cut the feed.
The communications officer flinched. He fumbled with his console for a second, his fingers clumsy with shock. "Admiral?"
Cut the feed,
she repeated, her voice flat, cold, weighed only by command. The screen went black. The silence that remained was somehow heavier. Kaya rose from her chair, her motion fluid and deliberate. She swept her gaze across her bridge crew, meeting and holding each officer's eyes for a paralyzing second.
Seal the command deck. Restrict all transmissions to this channel. Signal Red Alpha 1 to the fleet. Full combat readiness. All ships hold position. Acknowledge.
A chorus of shaky, "Aye, Admiral," came from the crew, who were now moving with desperate energy, glad for the release of action. She turned to her executive officer, her expression unreadable.
Commander, summon the council. My briefing room. 5 minutes.
She turned and walked toward her ready room. Her posture was straight, unyielding. The doors hissed shut behind her. The Perseverance's briefing chamber was a theater of cold light and stark geometry. A large circular holotable dominated the room's center, dormant. Around it sat the 3rd Fleet's senior command staff, the gruff, barrel-chested master of ordnance, the whip-smart head of fleet intelligence, the stoic marine general, and a dozen other officers whose combined experience represented centuries of warfare. Admiral Kaya Navar sat at the table's head, a point of stillness in their collective fury. She remained silent after entering the room. She steepled her hands before her, scanning each face as they spoke. Their words were fire.
A decapitation strike!
General Orlova, the Marine commander, snarled, her fist clenched on the table.
We know Sarek's command location. My Reavers can be on the ground in 90 minutes. We'll bring him back in a cage.
Too subtle,
countered the ordnance chief, a man named Voronov.
This requires a statement. His fortress world, Vorash. We have 300 fusion warheads in our magazines. We can crack that planet's mantle, turn their seat of power into planetary debris. Saturation bombardment of every major military installation in the system,
offered the head of fleet operations.
We hit them everywhere, all at once, overwhelm their CNC, let them choke on their own hubris.
They went on, each proposal a variation on the same theme: brutal, overwhelming, and immediate retribution. Kaya listened to it all, her expression unchanging. She let the fury wash over the room. They were angry for her as much as for the medic, trying to offer her vengeance, a remedy for a wound beyond their comprehension. The proposals dwindled. A heavy silence fell upon the room again, the unspoken question filling the space between them. What do you want, Admiral? Give us the order. Commander Mei-Lin Lee, Kaya's second-in-command and chief strategist, stood. She moved to the holotable and activated it with a sweep of her hand. The Jidan system's star chart bloomed into 3-dimensional life.
General Orlova's plan is sound, but a Special Forces raid has a high probability of failure and expects extreme casualties,
she began, her voice calm and analytical.
Chief Voronov's proposal is effective, but indiscriminate. It would kill millions of non-combatants. That is their method. We will choose another.
She met Kaya's eyes across the holomap's glowing starlight.
The warlord sought to teach us a lesson about our perceived weakness,
Mei-Lin continued, her hands moving swiftly over the console, calling up new data streams.
I propose we teach him a lesson about our strength, the strength of our discipline.
A new overlay appeared on the map. Dozens of small icons, arranged in a vast array at the system's edge, glowed.
The Helios swarms,
Mei-Lin said. The room grew quiet. The swarms were the sector's primary terraforming tools. Each unit, a massive solar mirror miles wide, could focus the star's energy with pinpoint accuracy to warm frozen worlds or melt polar ice caps. They were instruments of creation.
Sarek believes war is about breaking bodies and shattering morale.
she explained, dropping her voice to a near whisper.
Modern war is about logistics. It is about industry. It is about the ability to build and field an army. Sarek has a war machine. We are going to take it apart, piece by piece. We will confine our strikes to designated military-industrial zones, preserving all cities and civilian populations.
She zoned in on Vorash. Red boxes appeared, highlighting orbital shipyards, planetary munitions factories, colossal refinery complexes, military staging grounds, and primary energy grids.
We will use the Helios swarms to deliver overwhelming energy to these targets. Instead of bombs and warheads, we will use light. We will melt them. We will superheat their infrastructure past its material tolerance. We will turn their foundries into slag, their shipyards into molten rain, their power plants into fused glass. We will perform a strategic deconstruction of their entire capacity to wage war.
She looked up, sweeping her gaze across the command staff. They were warriors, used to thinking in terms of kinetic energy and explosive yields. This was something else entirely.
We will do this after giving them a 72-hour window to evacuate all non-combatants from these zones to designated safe areas,
Malin concluded.
We will show them that we can hold their entire world at our mercy and still take the time to protect their innocent. We will show them that our compassion allows us to wield our power with such terrifying focus.
She fell silent. Every person in the room turned to Admiral Navarre. Kaya looked at the plan displayed in the holographic light. It was ruthless and just. It answered Sarek's barbarism with a lesson in physics. It was the delivery of a sentence. She spoke, her voice quiet but imbued with unshakable finality.
Make it so, Commander.
The face of Fleet Admiral Kaya Navarre filled the screens across the Jaidan Mandate. She stood before a plain gray bulkhead wearing a simple, unadorned service uniform. Her expression was placid, and a cold, distant light filled her eyes. Her voice was calm and measured, carrying the weight of a judge's verdict rather than a commander's threat.
To the people of the Jaidan Mandate and the government of Vorash,
she began, and a flawless auto system translated her words into the harsh clicks and gutturals of the Jaidan language.
Several hours ago, your warlord Sarek publicly executed a human medical officer, a non-combatant protected under all interstellar conventions of warfare. He did this under the claim of teaching humanity a lesson.
She paused, letting the weight of her words settle.
You will learn a lesson today.
The view behind her shifted, a detailed map of Vorash replacing it. Key industrial sectors, military bases, and orbital infrastructure pulsed with red highlights.
In the interest of preserving civilian life, the Human Federation is providing a period of 72 standard hours, effective immediately. During this time, all non-combatant personnel must evacuate the designated red zones. These are areas of primary military and industrial function. We are broadcasting a list of these zones on all open channels.
The map shifted again, showing green zones, major population centers, agricultural districts, areas designated as civilian.
We have designated these green areas as planetary safe zones. Any citizen who relocates there will be protected.
A final overlay appeared, showing a single glowing corridor of light extending from the planet's atmosphere out past the orbit of its moon.
Furthermore, a single protected space corridor will remain open for off-world transit. We will patrol this corridor to ensure its security. Any Jaidan vessel, civilian or otherwise, that wishes to depart the system may do so through this corridor. They will have safe passage.
Kaya's face returned to the foreground.
At the 72-hour period's conclusion, this offer will expire. The designated zones will become hostile. The evacuation route will remain open, but only for refugee traffic.
Her tone was factual, her words a statement of consequence. The specificity of the designated zones, the ultimatum's confidence, was menacing.
You have committed a crime against peace,
she concluded, her voice a flat, hard line.
A reckoning is due.
The broadcast ended. Across the Jaidan homeworld, a stunned silence gave way to a rising tide of confusion and fear. It was an eviction notice. Deep beneath the capital city of Vorash, Warlord Zarek laughed, the sound deep and guttural, full of genuine amusement. He replayed the human admiral's broadcast on the main strategy tank, a smirk spreading across his broad-scaled face.
A bluff,
he declared to his assembled command staff.
A clever but transparent psychological maneuver.
His officers, including the observant sub-commander Pellin, shifted uncomfortably. The specificity of the human message was unsettling. Sarek gestured dismissively at the screen.
Study their history. Read their doctrinal analysis. Their psychology prevents this kind of action. Their sentimentality binds them. Their commitment to protecting civilian workers in those factories is absolute. They build their entire philosophy on protecting the innocent.
He paced the command center, his heavy boots thudding on the metal floor.
This is a classic fate. They want to create panic. They want to disrupt our production schedules with a mass exodus of our labor force. They hope we will cripple ourselves by complying with their absurd demands. It is a war of logistics, and they think they can win it through threats alone. Pathetic.
A senior commander cleared his throat.
Warlord, with respect, the specificity of their target list is comprehensive. Their intelligence is flawless. What if they are serious?
Sarek stopped and turned, narrowing his eyes.
If they are serious, then it is a gift, he hissed. They have announced their targets. They have told us where they intend to strike. What kind of fool telegraphs their every move?
He jabbed a clawed finger at the tactical map.
And they think we will allow our workforce to walk away, to abandon their posts, to cede the heart of our war machine?
He smiled, a chilling display of sharpened teeth.
No, we will show them the true meaning of strength. We will show them the flaw in their compassion.
He turned to his communication officer.
Issue a system-wide decree. Declare any Jaidan citizen who abandons their post in a military or industrial zone a traitor. Consider any attempt to flee toward the safe zones an act of desertion. The punishment is death.
The officers exchanged uneasy glances in the ensuing silence. Pellin's stomach coiled. This was beyond the harsh martial lore of their culture. This was monstrous. Sarek swept his gaze over his officers, daring any of them to challenge him.
Our people are a weapon. Their presence in the factories and shipyards is a shield. The humans believe they are merciful. Let us see if their mercy extends to firing on the people they claim to protect. They will hesitate. Their command structure will fracture over the morality of it. And in that moment of weakness, we will strike.
He turned to his fleet commander.
Prepare the interceptor fleets. When the humans show their true, cowardly nature, we will gut them.
He leaned back, supremely confident, convinced of his own strategic genius. He had created a coerced human shield on a planetary scale. Chaos gripped the surface of Varash. The human ultimatum, intended to save lives, became a death sentence delivered by Jaidan hands. Word of Warlord Sarek's decree spread with viral speed. Panic, a low simmer, erupted into a full-blown boil. Millions of workers, engineers, technicians, foundry operators, dockloaders found themselves trapped. Their human enemies had offered them a path to safety, and their own leader had barred the way. The first attempts to flee were small, desperate trickles. A family trying to slip out of a munitions complex under the cover of darkness. A group of refinery workers attempting to make a run for the nearest safe zone. Miles away across the arid plains, their own military met them. From his forward observation post on the primary shipyard's outskirts, Sub-Commander Pellin watched the horror unfold through a high-powered scope. His task was to enforce the blockade on evacuation route Gamma 3. Below him, a crowd of several thousand civilians had gathered, pressing against a checkpoint his soldiers held. Families carrying small bundles of possessions, their faces etched with fear and confusion, chanted in a desperate plea. "Let us pass! We are loyal! We serve the mandate! Pellin's orders were clear. Use whatever force necessary to disperse them. His commander, a hard-faced officer who worshipped Sarek's philosophy, stood beside him.
They test our resolve, Sub-Commander. Make them see their folly.
Pellin watched as the crowd surged forward. A shot rang out from the line of soldiers, a warning shot fired into the air. The crowd recoiled, then pushed forward again, a greater fear propelling them. The commander gave the order.
Fire on them!
A chill seized Pellin. Sir, these are our people.
They are traitorous elements corrupted by human propaganda,
The commander snapped.
Fire, or I will have you shot for insubordination!
The soldiers on the line, products of the same brutal doctrine, obeyed. The sharp crackle of pulse rifle fire echoed across the dusty plaza. The crowd's front ranks crumpled. Screams of terror and agony replaced the desperate chants. The mass of people broke, stampeding away from the checkpoint, trampling their own in their haste to escape the soldiers meant to protect them. Pellin fought down a wave of nausea. He looked up at the sky. High above, the human fleet hung in silent, patient orbit. Their weapons were cold. Their ships held their positions with an unnerving stillness. The gunfire echoing across his world came from his own people. He witnessed a paranoid, self-devouring madness. The humans had offered a choice, a chance for the innocent to step aside. It was Sarek who had decided all were either tools of war or traitors. He looked at the bodies strewn across the plaza, at the weeping families fleeing back toward the industrial heart he was meant to guard. A terrible thought bloomed in his mind, an ideological heresy. Who is the monster here? The final seconds ticked away on the Perseverance's bridge. The main holoscreen showed a simple, elegant chronometer, its numbers counting down to zero with relentless accuracy. Every officer stood at their station, their movements economical, their faces grim. The low thrum of the ship's power systems vibrated through the deck. This was the somber solemnity of an execution. The timer reached zero. A single soft chime echoed through the bridge. The 72-hour window closed. Commander Mei-Lin Lee stood at the master tactical console, her posture perfect. She turned to face the command chair where Admiral Kaya Navar sat, a statue carved from grief and duty.
Admiral,
Mei-Lin reported, her voice steady.
The 72-hour period has expired. All human evacuation corridors remain clear. Planetary safe zones are stable. The Gidans have blockaded their own civilians within the designated target zones. Orbital and atmospheric reconnaissance confirms Warlord Sarek's forces have fired upon and killed more than 4,000 of their own people attempting to flee.
Kaya met her gaze, her own steady. The news settled, a heavy weight in the room. Mei-Lin continued, dropping her voice a fraction of a decibel.
The Helios swarms have oriented and locked on primary targets. All systems report green. We are ready to commence strategic deconstruction.
She looked directly at her friend, her admiral.
The board is yours for final authorization.
This was the moment, the final step. Kaya Navar looked away from Mei-Lin, her gaze sweeping over the tactical holomap. It was a web of red lines and boxes, a map of an entire civilization's capacity for violence. Shipyards that built their dreadnoughts, factories that forged their armor, refineries that fueled their fleets. Each target was a vital organ of the Gidan war machine, and she was the surgeon holding the scalpel. For a fleeting second, the image of her brother's face flashed in her mind. Not his death, his life, his gentle smile, the pouch of Hideoma seeds.
To win a war, you must always remember what you're fighting for.
This was justice, cold, exact, and unavoidable. She took a slow, deliberate breath, the first to reach the bottom of her lungs in 3 days. She met Mei-Lin's gaze. Her eyes were clear, focused into a single hard point of light.
Mei-Lin,
she said, her voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the bridge.
Execute.
Far out at the system's edge, beyond the most distant planetoid's farthest orbit, something vast and silent moved. The Helios swarms, each unit a shimmering hexagon miles wide, pivoted in the void. They were mirrors, not weapons. They had thrusters for orientation. But they were the largest and most perfect mirrors ever constructed by human hands. In unison, guided by a single chilling command, they angled themselves toward the Vorash star's brilliant glare. They caught its light, its endless torrent of photons, and shaped it. Subfield projectors on the surface of each mirror aligned the waves of light, focusing them from a diffuse, life-giving warmth into something coherent, something weaponized. From each of the 50 swarm mirrors, a beam of concentrated sunlight shot across the millions of miles of empty space. The beams were invisible in the vacuum, traveling at the universe's ultimate speed limit. They were lances of unimaginable power, forged from the star that gave the system life. The first beam struck the largest of Vorash's orbital shipyards, the Vorash Prime Assembly Yards. The impact was a silent flash, a colossal release of energy. One moment, the shipyard was a complex, skeletal framework of girders and docking arms, kilometers long. The next, the point of impact glowed a furious, incandescent white. The focused solar energy was millions of times more intense than the star's normal output. This was a state change. The raw power overwhelmed the station's alloy bonds. Metal sublimated, turning directly from solid to gas. The beam, as wide as a city bus, traced its way down the station's spine. It moved with the slow, deliberate movement of a cutting torch. From the Perseverance's observation deck, the effect was both beautiful and terrifying. The superstructure glowed cherry red, then white hot, then it vanished, carved away layer by layer. Entire sections, their support severed, drifted away, collapsing inward, their own momentum tearing them apart. Molten metal, torn from the dying station, flashed into vapor in the upper atmosphere, a silent aurora visible for 1,000 miles. The beam moved on, shifting its focus to the next orbital dock, and the next. All across the planet's orbit, the symbols of Jaidan military power were unwritten by the silent, unforgiving glare of their own sun. Down on the surface, the world's end began with a low hum. In his command bunker, Warlord Sarek was staring at his strategy tank in stunned disbelief. The icons representing his orbital fleet and infrastructure were blinking out, one after another. Sensor logs were clear. They had just vanished. The ground vibrated. A deep, resonant hum grew in intensity, as if the planet's industrial heart was tearing itself apart. The vibration traveled through the bunker's foundations, making the teeth of his staff chatter. Outside the bunker's shielded viewports, the horizon over the Vorkan industrial zone pulsed with a silent, hellish orange. Miles away, the Vorkan munitions complex, a sprawling city of factories and assembly lines covering 100 square miles, was the next target. A second Helios beam, focused to a wider cone, descended from the sky. It was a torrent of energy. The energy washed over the entire complex, and the temperature of the air, the ground, and every structure climbed at an incredible rate. Concrete foundations glowed, steel supports softened and sagged, bending under their own weight like wax. The massive, reinforced domes of the assembly plants turned translucent with heat, then slumped, collapsing into pools of incandescent liquid. The earth beneath the complex glossed over, turning into a smooth, black, reflective surface. Inside the bunker, status reports flooded the consoles.
Vorkan complex is reporting structural failure. Temperature readings are off the scale. Primary refinery alpha is melting. I repeat, the entire structure is melting.
Maglev network offline. The tracks have fused. Sarek stared, his arrogance cracking as profound animal confusion took its place. The sight defied processing. This was a thing apart from war. War was explosions, shockwaves, warriors locked in glorious combat. This was physics applied on a planetary scale. His entire war machine, the product of centuries of martial pride, was dissolving. It was being unmade. He lurched toward the viewport, shoving an aide aside. He looked out at the horizon. The distant mountain range that housed the planetary power grid was now glowing, its peaks silhouetted against the sky lit by the unreal orange light. The armored viewport, rated to withstand a direct nuclear attack, groaned as the air outside thinned and shimmered with waste heat. Warlord Sarek, the great conqueror, the teacher of harsh lessons, watched as his world rendered down to its base elements. He expected an army. He prepared for a fleet. He stood defenseless against the sun. Through the hazy, superheated atmosphere, the dropships descended. They were heavy-duty marine transports, their hulls coated in ablative shielding to withstand the hellish temperatures. They moved with a calm, deliberate purpose, their engines a low thrum against the backdrop of a dying industrial world. The human marines came to apprehend, their mission one of capture. Their targets were the command and control centers, the nerve centers of the Jaidan military. Minutes before the ground teams launched, the fleet's escort destroyers moved into low orbit. Their point defense cannons, typically used to intercept missiles, lanced down with focused energy pulses. They traced power conduits, boiling the lines within their shielded casings, and vaporized communications arrays with surgical precision. The bunkers were now just tombs of dark, powerless metal, cut off from the world. A dropship landed with a single hiss of thrusters, 100 yards from the entrance to Sarek's primary command bunker. The main blast doors, designed to withstand a siege, stood inert. A small team of Marines, clad in environment-sealed armor, blew the emergency lock with a single plasma charge and entered. The eerie red glow of emergency chemical lights lit the bunker. The stale air was thick with the scent of fried electronics. Jaidan officers slumped at their dark consoles, their faces blank with shock. Their world unraveled in a matter of hours, and they met its end without firing a single shot. The Marines found Warlord Sarek standing in the center of his command deck amidst his terrified staff. His ornate armor was just armor. His ceremonial blade was just a piece of metal. His authority had evaporated with his infrastructure. He stood there, utterly bewildered, a king of ash and slag. He looked at the human Marines as they entered, their rifles held at a low professional ready. He braced himself, his fists clenching. The Marine sergeant in command raised his hand. "Warlord Sarek," he said, his voice calm and amplified by his helmet's external speaker. "By the Human Federation's authority, you are under arrest for crimes against the conventions of war." Sarek just stared. He built an empire on absolute force, defeated by an opponent who fired no shots at him. He became a subject of legal proceeding. Physics and bureaucracy had undone him. The second broadcast was different from the first. It was an accounting. Transmitted on all channels, human and Jaidan alike, its signal clean and unavoidable. The camera showed a makeshift tribunal. The setting was a cavernous, hastily cleared-out hangar bay on the Perseverance. The lighting was stark, functional. In the foreground, sitting behind a plain metal desk, was Admiral Kaya Navar. She wore the same simple uniform, her face grim and resolute. Here, she was a judge. To her side sat Commander Mei-Lin Lee, acting as prosecutor. In the hangar floor's center sat the accused, Warlord Sarek, and 20 of his senior command staff. They sat on simple benches, unconstrained, stripped of their armor and weapons, looking small and defeated under the harsh lights. This was a public record, a formal accounting. Mei-Lin Lee began the proceedings, her voice as calm and measured as it was in the briefing room.
This tribunal convenes to address violations of the interstellar articles of conflict, specifically those pertaining to the treatment of non-combatants and the execution of protected medical personnel.
A larger screen behind her flickered to life.
Exhibit A, she said.
The raw footage of Liam Navar's execution played for all to see. The sound of Sarek's arrogant pronouncements filled the hangar, followed by the terrible, swift finality of the act. Mei-Lin let the final horrific image linger for a moment before cutting the feed.
The evidence of the primary war crime is clear,
she continued, her tone firm.
The accused, Warlord Sarek, not only ordered this execution, but broadcast it as a statement of policy.
The screen changed. It now showed satellite imagery of Vorash. Heat signatures and crowd density analytics were overlaid, showing the mass gatherings of civilians at the checkpoints.
Exhibit B, analysis of the 72-hour evacuation period. We will now play captured Jaidan military communications from this time.
A voice filled the hangar, the harsh, guttural voice of a Sarek commander.
The warlord's orders stand. No one crosses the line. Use lethal force to disperse the traitors.
The sound of pulse rifles firing into a crowd followed. Mei Lin presented the data, the casualty counts, the locations, the exact times that corresponded with Sarek's decree. She built her case with cold, verifiable facts. She dismantled his legacy with the same focus she had used to dismantle his war machine. Sarek watched, his expression shifting from defiance to a sullen, impotent rage.
The prosecution calls its final witness,
Mei Lin announced. From the hangar's side, a figure emerged, escorted by 2 human marines. It was Sub-Commander Pellin. He walked freely, his head held high, though his face was a mask of shame. He had surrendered to the first human patrol he encountered during the ground operation, providing them with his command codes and full testimony. He took the stand, a simple chair placed opposite the judge's table, and faced his former leader.
Sub-Commander, Mei Lin said, please state for the record the orders you received regarding the civilian evacuation.
Pellin's voice was heavy but clear.
Our orders were to blockade all routes leading to the designated safe zones. Our instructions were to treat any citizen attempting to flee as a deserter and a traitor.
And what was the prescribed punishment for desertion?
Mei Lin asked. Pellin looked at Sarek, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and accusation.
The punishment was summary execution,
he said.
I witnessed my commanding officer give the order to fire on a crowd of civilians. I witnessed the deaths of hundreds of my own people, whose only action was trying to obey the human warning.
Mei Lin asked her final question.
And who was the ultimate source of these orders?
Pellin held his gaze steady on his former warlord.
The orders came directly from the office of Warlord Sarek. He made our people into a shield. He condemned them.
He finished his testimony and fell silent. He told the truth. In the silent hangar, his words were an indictment. With the evidence presented and the witness heard, a heavy silence settled over the hangar. Admiral Kaya Navar rose to her feet. She fixed her eyes solely on Warlord Sarek, ignoring the data screens and her command staff. Her voice carried the cold, heavy weight of righteous authority.
Warlord Sarek,
she began, her voice echoing in the vast space.
You sought to teach us a lesson about our humanity. You believed our compassion was a flaw, a weakness you could exploit. You are the one who has learned.
She stepped forward, sweeping her gaze over him and his silent, defeated staff.
In response, we left your cities standing. We preserved your people. We excised only the cancer of your war machine, while taking pains to spare the body of your world.
She paused, letting the truth of it sink in.
You used your own people as a shield, condemning thousands to death to protect your weapons. In response, we will provide the aid, resources, and protection necessary for your civilians to evacuate to safety, to find new worlds where they can live free from your tyranny.
She narrowed her eyes, the cold fury she had held in check for days surfacing as an arctic chill.
The sentence of this tribunal is life. Death would be a release. It is too merciful for what you have done.
She gestured to the hangar's main viewport, which depolarized, revealing the star-dusted black of space and the wounded, hazy orb of Vorash below. The evacuation corridor glowed, a steady stream of refugee ships moving along it.
I hereby sentence you and your direct command staff to abandonment. We will strip you of all advanced technology, provide you with only the most basic tools for survival, and leave you on the world you broke. You will live out your days on the planet whose industry you sacrificed, among the ghosts of the people you murdered. For everyone else, the corridor to the stars remains open. For you, it is a reminder of a future you can never have."
She looked Sarek directly in the eye, her voice dropping to a final chilling declaration that would echo across the sector for generations.
"You wanted to see the Jiden way triumph. You will live under ours instead. We call this justice."
The Admiral's quarters on the Perseverance were Spartan, a place for work and rest. Kaya Navar sat at her small desk, the vastness of space visible through the armored viewport behind her. The tribunal was over. The Marines had deposited the prisoners on their new self-made prison. The war in this sector was over. She held a small, worn leather pouch in her hands. They had recovered it from her brother's personal effects. The scent that clung to it was faint, a ghost of mint and rich earth. A tear, the first she had allowed herself to shed, tracked a silent path down her cheek. She opened the pouch and tipped the tiny Hidioma seeds into her palm. They were so small, so full of potential, a stark contrast to the sterile destruction she had unleashed, a promise of an unplanted garden. With her other hand, she activated her private terminal. A recording activated. It was a personal log Liam had sent her weeks ago. His face, young and alive, filled the screen. He was in the bustling triage tent, a nervous-looking rookie at his side.
"Okay, Private,"
Liam spoke from the recording, his voice full of gentle patience.
"The trick to a good tourniquet is commitment. You have to tighten it until you think it's too tight, and then you give it one more good turn. Stay calm, you're helping him. The real damage is already done."
He laughed, a bright, easy sound that filled the quiet of Kaya's quarters. The rookie fumbled, and Liam guided his hands, his expression one of earnest dedication.
"See? You've got it. One life at a time, son. That's how we win."
Kaya watched the recording, a faint smile touching her lips. The tear fell from her cheek and landed on the seeds in her hand. She closed the recording. She gazed toward the viewport. Outside, against the scarred planet's backdrop, the single protected corridor of light remained. A steady, continuous stream of Jaidan ships moved along it, heading for the stars, for a new beginning.